Good morning. This is Stan in the swamps of Gainesville, Florida, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas, and today we're going to talk about everything from Truss to how do you handle advice while you're trying to design a show on Light Talk.
And this is Anne from San Clemente. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen humans. How about that one?
Hey, and you know what? Some humans are going to get Light Talk hats at LDI if you come and ask us a question. I've got them ordered, so the swag is in production.
How exciting.
Yeah. I know you're not a big fan of the hats, Ann, but we did sort of like, we couldn't do the whole logo on the front, so it's going to be a blue square with white Light Talk letters. But on the back, on the curve of the half moon at the back of the hat, it's going to say the Lumen Brothers.
Oh,
and, yeah.
Cool. Well, depends how I wear my hair that day. You two don't have that problem.
Oh, that's true. I'm glad I have hair any day.
I will proudly take one.
Okay. All right. So hopefully our listeners will come with interesting questions. And I've also got the index cards and Sharpies all lined up for that.
Ah, that's so exciting. Everybody think of good ones. It's going to be fun.
Think of good ones. Yep. To stump us.
Guys, do you realize what's happening? This is our second show in which David was unable to join us. He's out doing David things, I guess. You know, he's designing half a dozen shows. He's running barefoot down the beach with his dogs. And also he's getting ready for LDI. So for those who are missing David this week, next week he'll be right back in the seat with us, and he'll be at LDI answering all of your questions. Okay, it looks like I have the first question today. And this is from John in Tennessee. And he writes, I am confused. In rock and roll, how do you know how to lay out the truss?
Flat. No, on an angle. On a curve. I don't know. Steve, tell us.
Well, John, let me say there are two types of trusses I like to work with. If I'm using conventional lights, I have a tendency to still use the Thomas double-hung pre-rig truss. I like that truss a lot. If I'm using moving lights, I have a tendency to go with PRG, and I use their bat truss. And this is going to get to the answer to your question. And it comes to why I like the bat truss so much. The bat truss is only 15 inches tall. It has an open bottom to it. Comes in a couple widths, 24 inches and 30 inches, and it comes in a couple different lengths, a 10-foot and an 8-foot length. But what I really like about it is that it uses rotating spigot connections. So with that connector on the end of that truss, you don't have to use corner blocks or hinges. You can put that truss together in a fairly unique configuration. You can stand it up. As it flies up vertically, you can connect another truss. It locks right in and flies up vertically. So you can kind of tinker-toy that thing together in a lot of different configurations. If you have never done a truss layout, then I want to recommend a book to you, and that is Concert Lighting by Jim Moody. And he talks about a half a dozen or a dozen different types of standard truss layouts that you can look at and kind of consider what you like. But when I'm laying a truss out, particularly using the bat truss and using moving lights, I think about the architecture, the structure in the air I want the audience to see. If I'm using the Thomas pre-rig truss, that's kind of a different animal because I've got a par can in there and the focus is a little bit more critical for me. But with moving lights, I want to put something together that makes a big statement of architecture over the talent's head, and I want to be able to have that truss move. So a lot of my trusses are articulated, so something will move, something else will move. So I'm still kind of old school in which I'm moving trusses, even if it has moving lights on them. But I mean, if you've never done it, just start out with a box truss. Start out with a rectangle, upstage truss, downstage truss, two side trusses. You know, from there you might try circle. I have a friend who likes to lay out isosceles triangles. So he'll stick 5 sections of truss. Another leg will be 4 sections of truss, and another leg will be 3 sections of truss. So he's looking at this asymmetrical design in the air. But you're very much the set designer, I think, when you're laying out your trussing in the air. And you've probably done some drafting or some rock and roll in your days. What have you seen?
Yeah, I've drafted several shows, and I just think about it as, like you said, you're kind of the architect or the set designer. So I think, what are the aesthetics you're looking for? Like, we're artists first, so aesthetics is where you should begin. And is it a big circle over stage? Is it, that cool sounding triangle that you just spoke about? Beginning there, putting the architecture there for the aesthetics. And then after that, I just think about it like electrics, because I come from Broadway contracts, which are 4-wall contracts, which means there are no electrics chosen in the air when you start a Broadway show. You just light the show and decide where you need your positions. So that's what I think about with the rock stuff. It's like after you've set up that main aesthetic, then think about where you need your lights and then put dresses there.
That's a good point, because also you're looking at rock and roll designers these days, and for years, they've incorporated what one might call traditional rock and roll lighting, but they've also incorporated dance lighting. They've incorporated opera lighting, where there's a single point source really far away lighting someone. So I think design is design. I like that idea. You just put lights where you want them, then figure out what your truss is going to do.
One of the reasons that when we do facilities, depending upon the facility, there's a big push for a walking grid so that a point can be dropped anywhere on the stage, or arenas for that matter, so that the structure can have it chain mode wherever you want it. And that's sort of a great freedom. So I think it's laying it out however you want to lay it out, as opposed to you got to use these pipes or you got to do whatever.
Yeah, I love that Steve just said design is design, because I find when I'm out recruiting and I'll meet a new potential student, some of them will ask me things like, I want to study concert lighting. Do you have concert lighting at your school? And my answer is often no, because I just teach lighting design. So that goes for everything, So I don't think there is a genre of concert lighting. Like, yes, of course, there are things that are more usual in that genre, in the same way dance might have some techniques that it uses, or Broadway might have some techniques. But I think the goal is to learn lighting first, lighting design. And when you're a good lighting designer, you can work in all sorts of different genres. And why be predictable, right? If I'm a lighting designer of a concert thing, why do I only do what people have done in the past? Why not be innovative and pull from other genres? And, just because it's dance, does it have to have booms? Or, you don't need to be predictable and follow a pattern. Being a designer is being an artist, and you should start there.
Since you mentioned dance, I worked on a concert where there was a discussion. It was in a square room, a square box, and the choreographers wanted to arrange the room on a diagonal, so that the dance floor was on a diagonal and the seating was on a diagonal, and it came to a point, and everybody said, well, what are you going to do for side light? You don't have a wing to dump the light in. How are you going to do booms? And I kind of went, let me just think about that for a couple of days. And then I came back and I said, and there were some scenic walls and stuff, and I kind of could I put these mini strips on the ground on the two sides of the diagonal, and it cast these really great shadows, but it became a signature for the piece. And we did all the pieces, and that became the key light. And we had other lights overhead, but I never did lit dance like that before, but it was fascinatingly different. So it's like, yeah, it was designed and it was artistic, and we didn't blind any audience members because of the way it was organized, but it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, that seems cool. And that's you thinking outside the box. And I'm the first one to love booms, so I'm not saying that. But
right, I love booms too, but here I could.
But it's so cool to try something new, right?
I just didn't want to squash the creativity of something that hasn't been done before by saying, well, and I can't do what I know, and rather than say, okay, what can I do within this scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there's a production where the technical director said, if you orient the set this way, we're not going to be able to fly the pipes in, to kind of hang your lights.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, we'll make that work. Or we want to use moving lights as shin busters, so that's going to impact the wing space. Okay, well, let's look at maybe we go from 4 wings to 3 wings. It's sort of like, if you hit a dead end, you shouldn't sort of make believe it's not a dead end, but you should always sort of try and be creative.
Yeah, and I think John in Tennessee should get the book that Steve mentioned, because it's a great book, and learn those techniques, but then just do art. There is no one way to lay out truss. There might be techniques or things like that, but not one way. Great. Well, I have the next question. Sarah in Iowa says, How does one handle constant suggestions by a non-design team member? I don't want to be rude. Yeah, we were just talking about this in class the other day, actually.
Well, I wonder if she means, like, she wouldn't mean the director or the choreographer. Would she mean like a stagehand or a producer or just somebody who's,
Production
walking through
manager.
the theater, production manager?
Yeah.
You
That'd be my guess. And it is hard to handle because as soon as somebody talks to you and you respond at all, they suddenly think you're going to listen to them completely. And really, the only person you should be listening to is the director. I don't even listen to the choreographer. I mean, I listen. I don't say I'm rude or anything, but I will always say, that's a great idea. Why don't we discuss, or I won't even say that. That's an interesting idea. Why don't we discuss that with the director? Because really it's his or her vision that we're working with, completely. So we definitely need to get them in the loop kind of thing. And so, I'll kind of go that direction. If the producer walks by and says, oh, this kind of looks weird being all green or blue or whatever it is, I'm simplifying the question, but I'll say, yeah, we explored it this way. We could have that discussion with the director if you would like to, just so it's always, always, always coming back to the director, because you don't want somebody to think they have a direct vein to you and your design choices, because, then you're sort of undermining the creative team, and you want to make sure everybody's all, following the same vision, and it shouldn't be from outside people that you're working with, if that makes sense.
I agree, Ann. I think the problem that Sarah faces also is if she's at a university, then there are faculty who come by and feel they have to kibitz for you. And sometimes what I find is they kibitz at the wrong time. You're sitting there staring at the stage, you're trying to solve a problem, you're working it out, you've got a bunch of numbers in your head, and someone walks up and says, hey, have you ever thought about a red cyc? And you kind of go, oh, what, huh? Hang on a second. Or you're trying to keep the movement of moving lights in your head. So sometimes the advice can be well-meaning, but it comes at a really bad time. It's like that chess master working out 17 moves in his or her head, and someone walks up and says, hey, you want to move the queen? Yeah, I thought about that 30 minutes ago. So sometimes it's just distracting. You're trying to focus, you're trying to concentrate on the program, and your train of thought is interrupted or it's lost. But again, I think we go full circle back to the director. And if you can, you say, let's send those ideas through the director, or let's meet with the director and see what the director thinks if you're a student, so that the person who's giving you input is also saying it right in front of the director. Because sometimes the lighting designer and the director are in a different world from the faculty member who's giving advice. So that kibitzing, maybe the director wants that lime green red on Juliet. And that's exactly what they want. They want this weird split gel on her. And I walk into the theater and go, God, that's ugly. But I'm not on board with what the director wanted.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said, but let me take the contrary view just for the sake of argument. Well, I'll make a little bit of a joke. So at UF, the tech table is set up in such a way, and there's so much of it, that it would be difficult for anybody to get near it, to kibitz. It's sort of like an island of, the table is like, 15 feet long, and to get into the aisle. So rarely do I see that happen at our institution. But at the same time, I'm sort of, if it was me, I'm sort of open to anybody could have a good idea, and sometimes maybe they see something that I don't see. But if it became sort of a habitual thing, I think it would become annoying, and I wouldn't want it to get in the way. If my relationship with the director is strong and we're going back and forth, I think that's sort of a form of interference, and I think it would be sort of rude. I don't know. Have you guys actually seen that very much? I mean, I don't really encounter that too often.
Every day of the week.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's usually producers on my end, and sometimes
Okay.
production managers. Although I hadn't thought of faculty, that's true. When I come up to my students at the tech table, I often say, when you have a second, because I don't want to interrupt their process
Right.
at that moment.
Yeah. Usually what I do is I sort of if it's a student, I'm sort of waiting for them to invite me, to give them a comment, or I sort of actually, what I've been doing lately is I text them, and if they say, for tonight's rehearsal, would you like me to give you written notes or tell you in the moment, whisper in your ear, or give you a text? And then they can see it, and they can respond or not respond or respond later. I think the texting actually is sort of a nice form of communication for that. On the other hand, about producers, yeah, I mean, our production manager is pretty knowledgeable about lighting, but she has not intervened in the 5 years she's been here during a tech rehearsal at school anyway.
Yeah, and in my opinion, they shouldn't. If they have something, they should go to the director really and ask you to join and talk about it. But I would
they might come to me and say, do you think we're getting enough light over here or over there? And I would then talk to the student. But
sure.
I usually tell my students, if I'm walking after you've got the basic show in, if I'm walking towards you, there's probably something that I see, and oftentimes they will fix it before I get there, which means they saw it, right? If they're not seeing it and only I'm seeing it, then it's appropriate to sort of point it out to them. I'm also a big fan of laser pointers, so sometimes I'll just shine the light in the dark area, or and they'll get it,
How
right?
funny.
But I have to be careful not to light up anybody's face with it.
Their eyes, yeah. I'd add one more thought to this. A sneaky place that this happens a lot is the producer will say something to the assistant. And if you're an assistant or associate, you never, ever, ever say, oh, yes, that sounds like a good idea, or I'll tell the lighting designer or anything like that. You just say, you say, I'll take it to the lighting designer. You never want to commit to anything because you can get in a whole lot of trouble that way. And producers will kind of try to sneak in ideas that way, thinking that they've passed it on. Maybe they're not being sneaky and they just think they're passing it on. But as an assistant, you always have to say, you know what, I'll talk to my designer about your idea, that kind of thing, so that you're never committing to something.
That's one of the, I think, the fine points of being a lighting designer is to be a good diplomat.
Yes.
Diplomacy can't be underestimated.
Yes.
Well, looks like I have the next question, and it comes from Elizabeth in Yuma, Arizona. And she says, I'm designing a big musical on an ETC Geo. Should I record my effects into a preset or just edit the effect during tech? I don't want to keep people waiting for me. Well, I agree with the idea of not keeping people waiting for you. People will get, that's a waste of time. So whatever's going to be the most efficient method, I think you should use. It seems to me on that console, putting your effect into a preset is easily recallable, easily editable, and then saved as a new effect and then applied to the channel. So that would sort of be my thinking. But then there are other people who maybe are more familiar with other consoles, particularly busking consoles like maybe Hogs or Grand MAs, that it might be better to just build the effect right there because it's quicker and easier. I find that it's a little bit tedious making those effects in ETC, but then again, I'm not a programmer. So that's my perspective. Well, you are listening to Light Talk with Steve, Stan, and Ann, the Lumen people. And Light Talk is sponsored by...
All the way from the Texas Panhandle, that would be Total Bastard Products, the industry leader in special effects. And just in time for that holiday production of A Christmas Carol, The Nutcracker, or your local nativity play, White Christmas, Artificial, Asbestos Snow. Since the turn of the century, film studios have turned to asbestos snow when they need that wintry effect. Just ask Judy Garland. During the making of The Wizard of Oz, not only did the studio dump it on her head, she rolled around in asbestos snow. Ouch. Or perhaps Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. It was pumped at high pressure through a wind machine. The studio used 6,000 gallons of asbestos snow. The result, the set looked like a winter wonderland. The asbestos snow clung to the actor's clothing, hair, and skin just like the real thing, and it would not melt. It took hours to get it off. Or maybe you saw the beloved Christmas musical, Holiday Inn, starring Bing Crosby. As he sang White Christmas, he was covered in asbestos. Mazel tov, Bing. Total Bastard Products, bringing back the good old days with White Christmas, Artificial, Asbestos Snow. How do you know you're getting genuine Total Bastard products? I think you know. Just look for the caveman on the label holding that roll of gel.
I think I need to know. Was that true?
Yes, I mean, that was all of that's absolutely true.
Whoa.
And in fact, if you want to take it a step further, but I didn't want to get that long with the thing, you could ask Granny McMills about it, because she probably flocked her Christmas tree with asbestos snow. And, right now what's happening is people are actually putting warnings out. When you go to a flea market and you see those antique vintage Christmas ornaments with little flakes of white snow on it, that's asbestos. You don't want that.
I had no idea.
It remained
Makes
popular
sense.
until 1972 to do your tree that way.
And now, back to Light Talk. Greg in California writes, let's talk politics. What do you think the China tariffs are going to do to the prices of movers coming into the United States? I can't believe we're gonna dip our toes in the world of politics. Well, I don't know. Today is Friday, and this is going to air in about a week. And this week, the stock market took a dive. We lost over 1,500 points on the Dow. I don't know, interest rates, everything. I just got off the phone with my financial advisor who held my hand and said, don't worry, Stan, your retirement accounts are safe. But he did say the tariffs are not the problem. The tariffs are interest rates have been low since 2008. We're practically giving money away. Everybody's employed. The economy is going to overheat, and there's a fear of inflation. So we're raising the rates, right? But maybe too quickly, maybe too slowly. So what's that got to do with moving lights? I don't know, man. I would think that tariffs might increase the cost, but who knows? It's a global economy. What do you guys think?
Well, I think I did a little research into this, and what the prediction is that it's going to raise the price of Chinese imported lights by 25%. So you'll probably see a 25% increase in a light coming out of China into the United States. And you may see an additional 10% on top of that also. So it's going to raise their price significantly. Anne brought up an interesting point about this in regards to lights being manufactured there.
Yeah, I was curious about this, and Steve, maybe you know because you did research. I was wondering, because a lot of moving light companies have parts made in China, does that mean that our good old standbys that we perceive as American will also go up in price?
Well, I want to jump in here. I think, first of all, that as far as what I don't know where your research is coming from, Steve, so I'm curious to know the source. But what's going on right now is certain products are being tariffed, right? It's not like, everything. But there is the issue of raw material. But generally speaking, it's a global supply chain. So any manufacturer anywhere in the world, and when I even high end, before they were ETC, they were being managed out of, I think it was Belgium, because they were owned by everything are conglomerates. So it's difficult to sort of pin it down, like plastic, steel, aluminum. Where are they sourcing it? Where is it coming from? How many countries does it go through before it gets there? After it's manufactured, it's sort of difficult to trace. So I don't. But I think unless you're saying, Steve, that your research shows that specifically automated lighting is going to be included in a package of tariffs coming from China, then that's a different thing. Is that what you're?
No, what I'm saying is the research into this indicates that anything that is electronic is going to see that tariff hit it. And it seems to me that a moving light, I could be wrong, seems to me that a moving light would be an electronic device. I'm sure the most common thought behind that would be, say, a phone or a television. But I as I started looking at this, it seemed to me that Golden Sea, which is manufacturing a lot of lights, selling their own brand and manufacturing for other people, I think those lights are all going to take a big hit, which could be why some manufacturers are talking about moving all of their manufacturing back into their native countries. We're going to bring that manufacturing back to the United States so we don't get hit with this 25 plus 10% tariff.
And what it might do too is sometimes there are unintended consequences of these things. People will shift and add other manufacturers in other countries, like in Italy or in the Czech Republic, where moving lights are manufactured, or the United States, might start lowering their prices, right, to increase volume. to raise their employees' wages, which is a problem in this country. Wages are stagnant, and workers are now scarce. So if you've got to pay more to your workers, you've got to figure out how to raise your bottom line. And certainly raising the price may not bring you that you get less sales. So sometimes you lower the price to increase volume. It's sort of like when companies are in trouble in a recession, the smart ones don't cut. They actually take that time and they innovate, so that when the economy comes back, they've got fantastic new stuff to sell. So it's really hard to predict these things. We'll see.
I was wondering, when you go to LDI, Ann,
mm-hmm.
what are you looking for? What is something on the floor that you just have a hankering to see?
This year specifically, or in general?
In general.
I always check in with like our good old buddies, like, Verilight and Martin and ETC and High End and those kind of things. I'm always looking just to see what's new and see where we're going. Some stuff I haven't quite seen yet. I'm always thinking about like things I can upgrade at the university. So I'm kind of putting bugs in the back of my ear of what might be a good fixture to choose or things like that. And then I have to admit, I see very little of what I want to see because it ends up being social hour the whole time.
Right. That happens to us. Can I respond to that, Steve? On the opposite side of the coin from Ann, and I do agree. I do that as well. What Ann says is visit all the usual suspects and then get caught up in visiting. But I sometimes like to go into the nooks and crannies. I like to go to the places where some small guy is innovating something that, is it really? In fact, Steve, I think it was you years ago who turned me on to a guy named Rob Kodiak who had a company called The Black Tank, and he was making these little itty bitty 4-inch by 4-inch LED fixtures. Remember that, Steve? And nobody was looking at him, and I thought these are the coolest. Or Gantom, when Gantom was sort of, nobody knew who Gantom was, and now everybody knows who Gantom is, right? So I like that. In fact, I was at Light Fair one time, and I decided to just walk around the edge of the edge where all the tiny little booths were, and that's where I found Luxam, who was making these little theatrical fixtures the size of your thumb, with fiber optic to do model lighting. And so I like sort of going off the beaten path if I can find the time.
The guy I found a couple years ago had a little tiny booth, and he had a couple LED lights sitting there. It looked kind of like a little light. So he was using them as kind of makeup mirror things. But he also found they had such a great output that they could embed them in television news sets. And they were very small, and they could put light on newscasters' faces.
They wash out the neck shadow?
Yeah, like highlight. Yeah.
And the thing, they're so powerful. I said, this is kind of amazing. You've got this much light coming out of this LED. And he goes, yeah, did you see Pirates of the Caribbean? All of the portholes on the ship were embedded with these LEDs, so they added impact when the cannons flashed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he said,
that bright.
The movie. He said, yeah, I have hundreds of those on the movie set. Nice. And he said, it's just all kinds of, I think you're right, Stan. I think there's all kinds of little products that are hidden away that you never know who you're going to see when you turn a corner. Yep. I agree. The usual suspects are great, but it's the little guy there who's built something in his garage that you never know. And you said you like to look at fixtures. What do you look for in a fixture? What are you looking for? What's the next great innovation you need?
Next innovation.
I want underwater for me.
Yeah, why is that? Underwater.
Well, I think last year there was a lot of that. I was looking at a project here in Gainesville that would be outdoors, and I'm thinking, boy, I really need a moving light that can stand up to hurricanes. And SGM makes them. They're out there, and other people are now following suit. So that's the next sort of, can we do that question? We've been talking about getting an Icon M or DLP chip based moving head. Hopefully that's going to get picked up. That's the one I'm still dreaming about. In fact, on this project I'm doing in Gainesville right now, the architect wants to project a gobo, and he said, I want to just do a pendant, and I want to have it on the floor, I want to have it on the walls. And I sent him a whole bunch of cut sheets on the different options, and he goes, I thought we could just change the gobo. Can't we just change that remotely? And I said, well, there used to be things called gobo RAMs where you could do that, or but not in a small package, right? He really needs a DLP based projector where you can change the image. And I don't know, I have to hunt around. Maybe they're out there at Light Fair, but that's something I'd like to see.
That's like in my imaginations. Like if I'm just looking for something that is out there, like I have certain things like, it's got to be bright, I need shutters, blah, blah, blah. But like the imagination I've always had, because I feel like this came up sometime I was in grad school, that there was a rumor that a fixture, I think it was a Claypaky fixture, was going to allow you to do any gobo you wanted. Like there was some way that it like formed the gobo,
That was the Icon M.
The Icon
That was
M. Okay.
Yeah,
I never got to see it. But
Light and Sound Design in the 90s, it was a DLP chip put inside a moving head. So you just send it digital data, black and white, and then it had a color wheel and color mixing. That had been done, but it wasn't terribly bright, if I remember. And we've been asking the industry through Light Talk to relook at that, because to solve my architect's image, he's got to have a projector, right? He's got to have a DLP projector to do what he's thinking, or I have to use a moving light with 6 gobos in it or something to get. But that's a different thing than a small compact architectural head of some kind.
Well, and I want to be able to morph from a sharp breakup to a blobby breakup to a triangle,
right.
Whatever it is, and I always think that would be an amazing invention if somebody did that, and I never got to see that one back then.
Well, you can morph in today's between 2 gobos in a moving light, of course.
True.
Right?
2 different wheels, yeah.
Right, 2 different wheels.
But it always seems limited, and it seems that often you're using what the manufacturer put in there, and it's not always great for you. And maybe you don't have budget for custom, or it just seems like there's a lot of gack that you have to go through.
You want digital morphing in. That's what you want.
Yeah, or mechanical. It could be little pieces of metal. I don't care. Wouldn't that be amazing? No, that would just break. But I don't know. Something like that would be really exciting. And have you heard, the ETC's new Releve? It says something about, what is it, like anamorph gobos or something? And I don't know what that means. Do you know?
You'll have to go by their booth and take a look at it.
I will, yeah. I'm planning to.
Who has that? Say that again.
ETC's new Releve fixture.
Yeah, Steve and I saw it at the workshop in the summer. What did you think, Steve?
I did not see the. I came in at the tail end of the discussion, so I did not get to see it fully demoed. I saw it running at the party they were having.
Right, that's where I saw it.
And I don't think I saw the anamorphic gobos in play. But again, I had popcorn in one hand and beer in the other.
But like where it could go is exciting.
Yes, it's very small. I think they're looking at that market of, who knows? I'm not Fred Foster, but I bet you're going to see one in every high school and middle school across North America.
Yes.
So if you can make a light that's a good price point, and all of a sudden you can add 6 moving lights into every cafetorium in North America, that's going to change the industry. The thing I'm looking for, I'd like to see this year, is a CMY moving light the size of a birdie. I want something small,
and
awesome. I'm convinced the Chinese can make it. I'm convinced.
That's funny.
Well, that Hammond organ solo tells us that once again you've spent another exciting morning listening to Light Talk. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk fun.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
If you do take us seriously and decide to litigate, the law firm of Tungsten, Phosphor, and Filament with our new paralegal, Merck Vapors, will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers and Sister, coming to you from Gainesville, San Clemente, and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to tune in next week when we discuss all the great news and products from LDI in beautiful Las Vegas.
All of that and a new sponsor, Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
We'll see you all next week. Bye from Light Talk.
Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good one. We'll see you after LDI.